You feel tired in a way sleep does not fix. You are still praying, still showing up, but something feels slightly off, and you cannot tell whether it is you or God's silence. You keep doing the right things. You read scripture. You avoid what you know would pull you away. Yet, obedience feels heavier than it used to. Not painful, just strained. You tell yourself this is normal. Every believer goes through dry seasons. But this feels different, and you hesitate to name it. There is a quiet discomfort you cannot shake. Not guilt, not rebellion. It feels more like resistance without defiance. Like rowing in the right direction, but against an unseen current. You wonder if you are being tested, or refined, or simply tired. But deep down, there is another question you keep avoiding. What if something is misaligned, even though nothing looks wrong? You are still doing what you believe God asked of you, but the peace that once accompanied obedience feels distant, and that absence unsettles you. You remind yourself that faith is not about feelings, that truth does not bend to emotion, and that God is faithful whether you feel Him or not. That helps for a moment, then the tension returns, because this is not about wanting comfort, it's about losing clarity. You feel unsure where to lean your weight, unsure which inner prompt to trust, unsure whether your persistence is faith or habit. There is a subtle fatigue that comes from doing God's will without sensing His nearness, and you fear admitting that out loud. Psalm 13:1. You recognize the honesty in that silence. Not accusation, not drama, just the ache of waiting without explanation. You push forward anyway, because stopping feels dangerous, because questioning feels disloyal. So you tighten your grip, you discipline harder, you pray with more effort. But the more you force momentum, the more hollow it feels, and that frightens you. Because you were never trying to run from God, you were trying to stay faithful. Here is where the overlooked signal appears. Not as a loud warning, not as sin exposed. It appears as friction inside obedience. When alignment is present, obedience still costs you something, but it carries coherence. The cost makes sense. When alignment is missing, obedience becomes confusing. You are still doing what is right, but you no longer understand why you are doing it. That confusion does not mean God is left, but it may mean something has shifted. You begin asking better questions. Not what am I doing wrong, but what am I holding on to that God did not ask me to carry? You examine your motives carefully, not to accuse yourself, but to listen more honestly. Have you continued out of fear rather than trust? Have you equated faithfulness with never adjusting? Have you confused consistency with obedience? These questions unsettle you because they cost more than comfort. They cost certainty. Proverbs 3:5. You feel brief relief in remembering that you are not meant to see everything clearly, that trust is required precisely where clarity ends. But then the tension deepens again. Because trusting God does not mean ignoring misalignment. It means being willing to pause long enough to notice it. You realize that spiritual misalignment hides behind good behavior. It hides behind service, behind discipline. It hides behind a refusal to stop and listen. You are not drifting because you abandoned truth. You may be drifting because you stopped checking your direction. Jesus spoke often about fruit, not effort, about life, not exhaustion. Matthew 11:30. That line lands quietly because you are carrying weight, but not rest. You are obedient, but not grounded. Faithful, but not settled. And now the question sharpens. Not why is this hard, but why does this feel disconnected? Misalignment doesn't always call you to change what you are doing. Sometimes it calls you to change how you are doing it, or why. Sometimes God does not remove the assignment, He removes the posture you brought into it. That realization brings temporary clarity. You breathe again. You feel seen. Then the final tension rises, because adjustment requires humility. And humility feels risky when you've already invested so much effort. Letting go of strain feels like letting go of control, and control has been what kept you going. But God was never sustained by your force. He was honored by your trust. Micah 6:8. The overlooked signal is not failure. It is not sin. It is not abandonment. It is the quiet heaviness that appears when you keep moving without recalibrating your heart. Spiritual alignment is not loud. It does not announce itself. It settles you. And when it's missing, even right steps feel unstable. You are not being asked to quit. You are being asked to listen more carefully than before, to slow down enough to ask whether your obedience still flows from trust or whether it has quietly shifted into pressure. The clarity comes gently but firmly. God does not need you strained to prove faithfulness. He invites you to walk aligned, not exhausted. The question is no longer whether you will obey, it's whether you will allow obedience to be recentered in trust. And that responsibility now rests with you.